So Max,
Uh-huh.
see any good movies over the last week?
Um, no, I don't think so.
You sure? Any big blockbuster epic action movies
I just, not
where
really. I just kind of like,
superheroes fight other Avengers? Did you see Avengers?
oh, that little indie film,
Yeah, yeah, that little Avengers
that little
film.
thing that a few people heard of. Yeah, I think I saw it. It was alright.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about it.
Here's the intro.
Yay!
Brothers ready? Roll podcast and action. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Brothers podcast with me, Maxwell, and you.
And me, Nick Halot.
From AlphaCentauri or Tari. I don't know how to pronounce
From
my own
Earth.
YouTube channel's name, but yeah, we're the people who make that. It's a movie podcast. That's what we do.
We're the
And,
only people who talk about movies ever.
Only, yep,
Pretty much
the
monopolized it.
exclusive film podcast.
Yeah.
You guys are lucky enough to hear it.
We're a pretty big deal.
Yeah, well, don't mean to brag, but
But yeah, big stuff. I don't know. Avengers, man.
yeah, Avengers. We're gonna talk about Avengers this week.
Basically.
You know what we thought of it, what we think is upcoming, speculation and shit like that. We're gonna be spoiler free until the end. We'll give you plenty of warning. We'll just do like the beginning, kind of like what we thought of it. If we think you should go see it, spoiler alert, you should go see it.
Yeah. It's a good
But
movie.
we'll get into more detail on why and what you'll probably like about it. And I have a little bit of news before we get into that, because you don't want to have news after the spoiler stuff, because you'll probably already peace out beforehand.
They're already peacing out. They've already left. They're bored.
I probably did. So news.
What has happened in the cinema world, Maxwell?
Well, a lot of comic book movie stuff happened. Before I get into that,
Because that's all we care about.
because I'm a segue master. Before we get into that, we'll get into Entertainment Weekly's newest magazine, published with the cover that has the first look of Quentin Tarantino's newest film, The Hateful Eight.
Wow.
I am fucking excited about that. The cover has Sam Jackson, Jennifer Jason Leigh,
Who's
and
that?
Kurt Russell in character on the cover.
Who's Jennifer Jason Leigh? I don't recognize her.
I'll look her up because she sounds familiar. And last time I heard that she was going to be in the movie, I was like, oh.
And who's
that
Bruce
girl.
Dern? That doesn't sound familiar either.
He's not on the cover, but it was just on the article I'm reading. I know Bruce Dern and Channing Tatum are going to be in it. I don't recognize Bruce Dern either.
Channing Tatum in a Tarantino movie. It's gonna be weird.
Well, there are no results for Janet Jason Leigh on IMDb.
Ah, so she's like debuting. This is her debut thing.
Maybe. Seems like she's not young. But then again, she's covered in makeup. It looks like she just got the shit beat out of her, but...
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I mean... So, yeah, the movie looks awesome. It sounds awesome. Yeah, it's the very first look. Sam Jackson looks cool. Everyone has awesome facial hair in the picture. Kurt Russell and Sam Jackson. Janet Leigh does not have facial hair, luckily, because that would be odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say that'd be a little left field for Tarantino, even for him.
Yeah. The whole movie I heard was going to be shot, or I don't know if the whole movie, but a good portion, like Interstellar, a good portion of the movie is going to be shot on 70mm film, which, for those that don't know, is IMAX, but even better, it's IMAX on film, which film quality is like, it's usually better quality, with the exception of like if you're going for a stylistic look. Almost all of Tarantino's films have been shot on film.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much the
When's it
only
coming out
news.
again? When's it coming out?
It's coming out. It just says later this year.
Wow.
Thank you, therap.com.
Okay. So I have some news. I mean, it's not even really news, but it's worth mentioning. Well, this is why I want to mention it. We were gonna do Daredevil, but I refused to watch the rest of the episodes
Yeah, sure.
because I want to extend the season as long as possible because it's such a damn good show. I don't want it to be over. And those episodes are so complete, each one of them, that you can kind of watch an episode and be satisfied with that one episode. It's not like you're dying. It's not like that. The ending is like you're dying to watch the next one. It's not saying that it's a bad ending, but as each episode, like I said, they're so complete.
It's self-contained.
Yeah, you don't need to really watch the next episode. You're already just like, wow, I just watched an hour of kick-ass superhero stuff. It's not something like Breaking Bad where like the whole episode could be Walt arguing with Skyler, and then all of a sudden he kills somebody at the very end, and you're like, oh my god. I've been waiting 40 minutes for that. Now I have to watch the next one. But yeah, so anyways, we put all that off. We're not going to talk about that in this episode, thankfully, so I can watch them at my leisure.
Well, did you want to talk spoiler-free about it? About what we think so far?
We could do that. I think we could do that. But in light of that, still, I wanted to mention that Charlie Cox has been very open about expressing interest in showing up in the Civil War movie with Captain America. Although he has stated that he believes he's missed that chance opportunity already. I think they've already started filming, and there's just too much in the process for him to just get squeezed in, which was sad. But at the same time, he's also expressed recently being in a Spider-Man movie, which happens a lot in the comics. If you're up and up about the Spider-Man comics and Daredevil comics, they cross over a lot. They're both in New York City. Daredevil sticks to Hell's Kitchen, blah blah blah. But that is actually a lot more of a something that could happen. I mean, the standalone Spider-Man movie is long in the future, and Daredevil, Charlie Cox, sounds like he's going to be Daredevil for the foreseeable future. So it's a definite possibility. I'm holding out hope. I think the idea of crossover movies are such a good idea now. It's about damn time, in my opinion. I'm sick of seeing origin stories.
I mean, what's his face was started in Kingpin. William Fisk in this show. Kingpin started in his character started in Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure either started in or was more regularly shown in Spider-Man. I'm pretty sure in one of the more recent games that nobody cares about, he was one of the villains. So that would make more sense. It was Frank Miller, pretty sure. It's Frank Miller that brought him into the Daredevil comics and made him a serious villain because everyone just thought he was just kind of like this fat kind of guy. And it was when he brought him into Daredevil that made him this like crazy, huge, tough guy.
Right.
I always compare him to that one guy, strong guy. He looks like he's fat under a suit, but when he takes it off, you realize he's crazy ripped and a really good fighter. And they really highlight on that in the show, especially with the sound of his punches. With Daredevil, all of his punches are like crisp and like when he punches people, it sounds like kind of a snap noise. But when Fisk punches somebody, it's like this woof. It's like this deep booming noise.
Oh yeah.
And I always compare him to if anybody's played the game Street Fighter, E Honda's character, who kind of looks. When you're just looking at him, he's kind of big, but then like he starts to actually get into the fight, and you realize that's just this crazy weird muscle definition that he has.
The dude's a man.
And I mean, he reminds me a lot of that, just because he's like secretly a good fighter, and like you think he's just this big guy, but
Kingpin being Honda, I can see that. Yeah. He's really cool. He is like. Because it wouldn't be enough if he was just some typical fat guy. And they do a good job in the show kind of like presenting him in a way that always makes him look big and just, like towering. It's really cool. But yeah, Spider-Man and Daredevil could happen, And
absolutely
crossovers galore just going on lately. I mean, now in what we'll get to, Avengers, there was so much that they just throwed in there and it didn't feel forced. But I don't want to go off too far. I'm just saying that's when you know how to make a good one. You're successful at it.
I always think some people say like, well, Spider-Man's so lighthearted and Daredevil's so dark. Then you look at the multiple crossovers between Green Arrow and the Flash and the respective CW shows. And those are very different shows. The Flash is very fantasy, very, kind of funny. It's realistic-ish, but
It's
it's,
a little lighter. It definitely is lighter. I wouldn't say it's
yeah,
crazy fantasy, but it's lighter.
yeah, it's more comic booky,
Yeah,
whereas Flash is very realistic.
Arrow
And
is
which is
very
which is what
realistic.
Daredevil is,
You just
with
said
the
Flash
exception
is
of a lot of
realistic.
people think it's or Arrow is realistic,
Yeah.
which is similar to Daredevil. So that's they can definitely work together, especially in a city like New York that they visited multiple times in the MCU.
It's so funny because in the show, and this is not giving anything away, but in the show they so very vaguely mention the events of the Avengers because it is in the same universe.
Yeah,
Like they talk about how there are parts of the city being renovated and stuff, and after the disaster, that's all they say, and that was the whole attack on New York. Because I think, which is it was smart by them in my opinion. Although they exist in the same universe, you're very right. Whereas the Avengers is very comic book, very like larger than life. Daredevil's so street level and gritty and simple. It's hard to
uh-huh.
just picture the two together. So I think the show is trying to just slowly introduce the two together to kind of mesh them slowly, nurture them. Because
Yeah,
it's just they're worlds apart, even though they're in the same world. It's hard to picture them together. From a comic book fan, of course I can picture them together. But from an outsider's perspective, I can see why they're doing what they're doing.
yeah, and Daredevil does get very fantasy, but it's always even the comics been relatively grounded. Like it's like Batman, where every once in a while there's those story arcs that are way out there, even though it's such a realistic character. And that's what Daredevil is, and I feel like they're gonna pull that off pretty well. Where they're not just gonna have out of nowhere just this crazy, unrealistic thing in the world of Daredevil that just doesn't at all fit.
Yeah,
You know, they're gonna work people into it pretty well. They already kind of like hint towards something, but I won't get into that because I don't
yeah,
want to spoil the territory.
yeah. No, they do hint at it, and I can see where it's going without giving
Uh huh.
anything away. But you can see where it kind of takes that route. But it's a very good show. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah,
Um,
great show. Everybody should watch it on Netflix. It's
yeah,
fucking awesome. The fight choreography is so good.
yeah, it's
That's
very incredible.
I've
I'm
never
wondering
seen.
how much of that stuff does Charlie Cox actually do? I wanted to look that up because I don't know if he does all that, but it looks like he does.
He loves the role, so I can picture him,
Trying to do as much as
trying to
possible.
do as much as he can. Yeah, because he loves doing this.
Yeah, yeah, he's one of those guys like Robert Downey Jr. with Iron Man and Mark Ruffalo for the Hulk. They just want to keep doing these movies. They don't ever want to stop being their hero, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean Robert Downey Jr. has vocally been. He's gotten better. Like in the past, there were moments where he said he didn't want to do anything like new with his contract, but eventually he renewed different parts so he could show up in different movies because he realized that he really does like it. And it's
Yeah,
just kind of some of the systems that the Marvel Studios has a lot of. They've got to have gotten better because they've lost so many directors for franchises. They lost John Favreau, but I think that was on relatively good terms. They lost the director of the first Captain America, which I'm not completely complaining about. They
so
lost
far
the
you've
director.
named two directors that have donated weak movies to the Marvel universe, so I'm not
Yeah,
too
but I mean,
worried.
and then again, they at the same time they lost the director for the first Thor, which again was a relatively weak movie. I mean, John Favreau has some of the more favorited movies out of all of them. The first Iron Man is credited as one of the best movies in the MCU.
Hmm.
But the director, they haven't had a standalone Marvel movie, which I don't know if that has to do with the director. But a lot of those directors complained that working with the constant rewrites and the producers stepping in and the studio stepping in, always trying to change things, was so exhausting
Yeah,
that they
I
just
can
stopped.
imagine such a universe that's so vast and interconnected like that
Yeah.
has so many people that like would just put their fingers into the movie and just say like no it can't for a good reason. I mean,
Uh huh.
at this point it's almost like the directors don't really have a say in what goes on in their movie because there's so much stuff going on in the background that are in different movies that are go in different ways, because they're all interconnected.
Yeah, and it's such a complicated process. They must have gotten better though, because the Russo brothers just love it. Joss Whedon is leaving. He hasn't really been vocal about issues with the studio or the producers, but he's just exhausted. Like, you could tell in interviews how tired he is, and how insanely, like, how much of an undertaking the two movies have been. So, that's understandable. So they've, and like I said, Robert Downey Jr. has not been too happy sometimes. Chris Evans gets for a time wasn't completely happy.
Yeah. I believe they've changed. Either they've changed their ways, or RDJ has gotten a new just view on his position, because I just saw him recently, very, very recently, in an interview talking about the potential showing up. Well, we talked about this last time, I think, about literally saying that Spider-Man was going to show up in the Captain America Civil War. And Robert Downey Jr. said outright, he says, I love these movies. I could do 1 million of them. Which is really great, because I can't picture anyone else as Tony Stark at this point.
Yeah, and the opposite was, like, I don't know, a year or so ago, when he got, like, just a crazy amount of money. He got mad. I might be, saying this wrong, but I'm pretty sure he got mad that he was getting paid way more than all the other Avengers for the first movie. So he threatened to just say, "All right, I'm not going to do any other Marvel movies if that happens again." So
I heard about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and they fucked around with his pay, and they were like, "All right, so it's going to be even now." And he's kind of like, "Good."
You're just goddamn right. That's what I thought. Well, I guess unless you have any more news, this would be a great time to get into the meat of what we want to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to transfer into this, to extend the hype train for future MCU, is the fact that I am reading an article right now that says the third Avengers movie, /4th, if you count Part 2 as the other one, Avengers Infinity War, will be shot entirely with IMAX cameras, according to Variety, which makes me insanely happy. So, just count me in already.
And you and fellow directors who give a shit about that stuff.
Oh, well, you really notice it. You don't notice it until, like, you see the movies near each other. You see a movie shot in IMAX on an IMAX screen, and then a movie converted to IMAX on an IMAX screen. It's like seeing a movie converted to 3D. You can tell that it's just
I feel like it's a harsher change, though. From like 3D.
Yeah, I mean,
it's meant to be 3D.
It's definitely 3D. More noticeable, but, like, I don't know. It's just
No, I gotcha. I believe you. It's
difference
hard for me to notice.
Yeah, the difference between, like, Interstellar and most movies is the fact that it was shot on actual IMAX cameras. Right. But yeah, so
cool. That's still I believe it. It can't hurt. I mean,
yeah,
it can't hurt.
It's the best quality of film.
Avengers 2. Tell me what you said, because you had told me what you thought about it. I want you to really quick opinion, not like, because we'll get into it more. But what was your initial reaction that you had told me the other day? Because I want to hear this from you first, because I want to tell you.
Like, the structure was very similar to the first, but just better.
Yeah.
Everything was ramped up, just better.
But what did you say about the first compared to the second? All right, I will refresh you.
What did I say?
I will refresh you. You said the first was better just because it came first.
Oh yeah, and I might be going back on that, but okay. I do know what I mean what I mean when I said that. Yeah, the first was just the first of its kind. That's why it's pretty much forever unbeatable.
Yeah,
it's just one of the first. It's like the Super Smash Bros. Of movies. Going back to the video game references. Mm-hmm. Some of the sequels might have improved gameplay and added characters, but the first is always such a classic, and there's never been anything like it until then. There might have been a few, like, crossover movies or, like, a few crossover video games, but those movies / Smash Bros. Was, like, unprecedented, I guess, in big mainstream universes.
I get the comparison, and I appreciate it. Well, the reason why I ask is because I had initially, I think my brain hadn't wrapped around the movie entirely. But when we finished the movie in theaters, I sat up and thought the typical logical thing. Oh yeah, it was really really good, but the first one was just a little better, because it was the first one. And the
Uh,
more I thought about it, the more and more it melded through my mind, and I can't find a good reason why the first one was better than the second one. I honestly can't. All the things that I look back on the first Avengers that
uh,
I was a little bit kind of meh about, even though it was a fantastic movie. Like you said, the first time something like that is done by Joss Whedon, it's a movie that gathers so many big time heroes. Basically, everybody was waiting for him to fuck it up, like mess it up terribly.
yeah.
Everybody was waiting for that. And the fact that he didn't and did well with it made it amazing. But this second time around, he knew that he was going good with it, and he got
Uh-huh.
to excel on every single level, It's like the first time you think you're going to get it right, and you do, and then you feel way more confident the second time around. This was him, Joss Whedon, in my opinion, with the Avengers at his peak. And there's a few there's a few elements that made that happen for me, but I'll let you talk about it for a little bit too. What you thought?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are complaining that it's a lot of the same, but like, and it kind of is, I guess, where it's like, oh, they like each other, they don't like each other for a little bit, but then they have to settle their differences, and then they like each other at the end again. That's kind of a structure that the first two movies have, and it's people might say, oh, that's the same thing, but it's better. It's just
Yeah,
better made than the first one. The first one was, I'm gonna do this. I'm not a very original person. I'm gonna quote another podcast I saw, the Dude Soup podcast from Funhouse. James said something. Shout out to them. James said something that compared the two movies almost perfectly, and it's the difference between the first movie is Stan Lee's movie, and the second movie is Jack Kirby's movie. Stan Lee was the guy who made all the characters and was like, all right, I'm going to write this character down. I'm going to, if anybody doesn't know who Stan Lee is. And Jack Kirby was the one who was like, I like all your description. I'm going to draw them, and I'm going to make these colors pop, and I'm going to make, you know, I'm gonna make the icons. I'm gonna make Captain America look like this and what you see today.
yeah,
The first movie was them getting together, them having a lot of heavy dialogue and like talking back and forth. This movie just starts off a spectacle, a comic book panel,
oh yeah,
whereas the first movie just had like, it was like a good action movie, it was solid, but there's so much build up, there's so much dialogue, so much stuff that like a lot of comic book fans I really liked. I had no problem with, but some people who weren't mainstream comic book fans might have a problem with. The first one had like no moment of that. There was so many less slow parts than the first one that you know
yeah. It just
it,
was.
it's it was Jack Kirby's movie, and the first one was Stan Lee's movie. So they both had their like perks in that part, in that
Yeah,
end.
yeah. I agree. It wasn't as much of a darker tone as I would have thought it would have been. I heard people say that, and I was kind of hoping for like you know, like a real left field dark movie, but I guess they're kind of transitioning to that. But I was still happy. Like I said, I wasn't
Oh yeah,
incredibly I wasn't at all, but I guess I was. I heard people say darker tone, and it
kind
wasn't.
of is. It has,
It
it
was, yeah. I
has,
mean,
yeah.
well, yeah, we'll talk about it, but
Before we get into spoilers, yeah, you
right.
know.
But I just want to say, as a whole, I was expecting, you know, I guess darker, but whatever. That like what reminds me of something is what you said before about them getting in their typical fight and then getting back together and then fighting again and then fighting the ultimate
Uh
bad
huh.
guy, putting aside their differences to fight the main bad guy. If people are sick of that, then they better get used to it. That's the formula of any of these teams.
Yeah,
I've been watching Justice League on Netflix. Awesome show. Kids show. I don't care. It has some very I think it has some very mature and adult themes. I recommend anybody who's a kind of a big comic fan to be out there to watch it. Because I'm watching it, so when the Justice League movie comes out, I'm gonna be like knowing my shit. I'm gonna know everything. But it's also a very good show. It seems like it has a lot of mature themes, I think. So I recommend it. But it's like in every episode, they'll have some little quarrel. Of course, it's much minor because they're only like 20-minute episodes. They'll have some little quarrel between teammates because they're like gods working with each other, you know. And then the ultimate bad guy comes aside, and they're like, all right, let's put aside our differences. We're gonna fight this main bad guy because we're ultimately good people.
Yeah.
And that's what happens, you know. It's hard for them. They're larger than life people to put their egos aside a lot of the times. And I think that's the best part of the drama between them is they're not the best of team. If they were happy-go-lucky, like constantly getting along, it'd be so boring.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, still, it's like, oh, you know, if your complaint is that like it's the same structure, it doesn't matter because they took the 3 act action structure that you know a lot of people learn about, in film studies and even outside of film studies. You know the basic 3 act structure of an action movie, and they take that and they just made it better in the second
Yeah.
one. They just upped the ante, I guess. I know it's an overused term for like sequel reviews, but they really did.
It's although it's been used so many times that 3 act structure, it works. That's why people use it.
Yeah,
There are
and there's
movies that don't do that 3rd act structure that kind of change that structure, and that's a risk. And sometimes they fall flat. Just keep it in the same universe. I'll cite Iron Man 2. That thing was horribly paced, and it felt like there was little to no action. So
yeah,
something like that tried to go away from and sometimes they don't even try, or they don't even realize they're venturing away from this 3 act thing. Um, well,
yeah.
a lot of people actually, a movie that you and I both love, Sucker Punch. A lot of people complain that their 3rd act was a bit lackluster. Like it started out real strong and then it kind of tapered off because the
Oh yeah,
last scene was just her. Spoiler, sorry. And that was just kind of like meh for some people, which I can see, but I was totally blown away by the parts all up leading to that I didn't care. So, like I said, and like you said, there's times when it works and there's times when it definitely doesn't, to venture away from that structure.
yeah. I mean, just look at some of the best movies, some of the best action movies out there. You'll realize if you know this 3 act structure, you'll realize have that has that 3 act structure, and it's not a bad thing that so many movies follow that structure. It's just pacing. Pacing is just good. You feel more comfortable when you're watching things like that if the pacing is good.
Right.
So,
Pacing is very key in my opinion.
oh yeah,
I can get
and
very bored very quickly.
yeah, Avengers 2 had it.
Yeah. I did that one time about I feel like I used to love movies, like all movies. I literally would love all movies. Dukes of Hazzard I saw and I loved it. Seriously, I'm admitting that to the public right now. I just thought it was like whatever. I was like, I don't understand how people can dislike movies. They're so much fun. They're all like moving images and it's all crazy. I was young, whatever. But then you start getting a little bit more, and you start noticing things like you say, pacing and the structure and stuff like
Uh,
that. And I think it hit me. Well, it hit me in Transformers 2. We talked about that a little while ago when I realized I finally saw a terrible movie that I didn't like.
it's
That I
when your
just
childhood
straight,
was ruined.
yeah, immediately like, oh my god, this movie ruined my life. No,
It's like that
but
moment when you find out that Santa Claus isn't real is when you see Transformers 2 and you realize, wow, there really are bad movies out there.
yeah, that's what I realized, and it was a very sad day. But I went to see Sin City 2. I don't know if you ever got around to seeing that. I was very excited to see that, and there was a lot of good
Uh-huh.
action. There's a lot of good action in it, but there was some parts that I was like sitting there, and then I start would like rustle around in my seat, and then I check my phone, and then I stopped and looked at myself basically, and I was like, why am I checking my phone? Why do I feel bored? And then later I looked up the reviews for this movie as it was coming out, and a lot of people were saying that it was paced horribly. So that's how it can happen, and it happened to me. So it can happen to other people. You notice it, you really do. You may not even realize it.
Yeah.
Pacing is key.
Yeah, and if you have to think to yourself, oh my God, how much longer is in this movie? Even if you enjoy it, if you're still looking at your clock, wondering, all right, how much time is left, it's probably not a good thing. You could tell a movie's good when it's like Interstellar. That flew by for me. I could not tell that movie was almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
It felt like shorter, but when the ending was wrapping around, I was like, no, it's not over, is it? Fight Club is like 2.5 hours movie. It's a fucking long movie, and I forget every time I watch it. I forget how long it is because it's so well paced and it keeps you going. There's so many good ones.
Wolf of Wall Street, I kind of got bored. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, and I mean some movies just a little bit, the pacing's just a little off. Some movies don't have perfect pacing, but
exactly.
This movie was a long movie. I think it was one of the longer MCU movies.
Right.
Didn't feel like it at all.
No, it did not. And it like you said, I think it succeeded. Even when the lull happened, I was like, okay, good, thank God, I need a breather.
Yeah.
I need a breather from all this amazing action.
Yeah.
It was so good. We need to get to the spoiler part, because what else can we talk about before we can talk about everything?
Basically, go see it. If you haven't seen any of the other MCU movies, you're fine with this movie. There's like one or two references that you won't really get that aren't crazy key, but if you haven't seen any of the other movies, go watch this movie anyway. Yeah. You've seen all these movies, then some of the references are a little better, but they really do a good job of making it like its own standalone movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get the gist of the idea. You can even think you'll see someone swing in, you'll be like, they're saving people, and you're like, that's a good guy. And then you see other people saving people, and then they talk to each other, and you'd be like, oh, they must be on the same team. It's simple problem-solving skills here, people. You'll get it. I have faith. But they did well with that. I think as a whole, Joss Whedon did a really good job of sending it off. It's sad to see him leave, but I did see a recent panel of him saying that he loves those movies too much and he can't see himself distancing himself too much from them. But as of now, he is on a long and very long hiatus from movies in general. He has no planned projects, which I think, as we're about to talk about, after this amazing one, he earned very deservedly so.
Absolutely. Those were a crazy undertaking. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I mean, he's not making it seem like he's done forever with these movies. He might come back for either in a writer's credit or something. A lot of people say he would work since we no longer have a director for Captain Marvel, he would work at that because he's always been good with strong female leads, as people know from his all his cult TV shows and Serenity. So
yeah. Serenity. You mean Serenity / Firefly.
Freaking crazy underrated. I gotta do that.
Every time I see Castle, I think I see Nathan Fillion. I'm like, dude, just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. All of those actors are still acting.
Yeah.
Savagely underrated movie. Go see that also. Go see Avengers 2 and then go see Serenity.
and then come home immediately and watch Serenity.
Yes. Yeah.
And then maybe have a snack or two because you haven't eaten in a few hours because they're long movies. And then you can go to bed because it'll probably be late. And then wake up and finish your daily schedule of stuff. But before all that,
I will always go on record in saying Serenity is one of the greatest movies ever made.
I agree.
That's just undeniable.
It's a top 10 for me, man. It has
absolutely. Again, pacing.
Great 3-act thing, All right, but yeah, go see it. Anyways.
Sorry, tangent.
Spoiler time. Are we getting into it?
All right. Yes. Everybody, if you haven't seen the movie, bottom line, go see it. Spoiler alert, though, for the rest
will follow.
But we say 2 thumbs up to this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're the
So
new Ebert and Roper, I guess.
no, I'm saying as a general sense, I don't want to be those guys.
Oh, okay. You don't want to be.
Oof. Oof. I'm gonna cut that part out. It was a little soon for that one.
What? Did one of them die?
Yeah, Ebert's dead.
Oh. Recently?
Yeah. They made a movie about him.
How recent? Well, if they made a movie about it, it can't be that recent.
Recent enough where it was like, I don't know.
You're
Still got
recent
that
enough,
burn on it.
recent enough where you're gonna have to cut that part out.
I will, just so we don't lose the only 10 audience members we have.
Yeah. All right. Fine. Whatever. But yeah, it was a good movie.
Good movie. Alright. So
Let's start off.
alert.
Yeah. Spoiler alert from now on. Get used to it. It's gonna happen. Turn off your YouTube. Click your remote control.
So I'll ask off the bat, I guess this doesn't really fit into spoilers, but, we could talk about anything with this specific category. What did you think of special effects? Just, simple, how'd you like them?
Good. I feel like you're setting me up for something to be like, no, you're stupid.
No.
They were good to me. I mean, maybe 10 years from now we'll look back and say they were shit, but I couldn't.
Yeah, they were good. There were a few moments that I thought were a little cartoony and a little, the CG didn't completely work, but, for the most part, it was really good.
Yeah, they've gone.
I thought they always
made
have
vast
those
improvements since like Blade 2, but
I mean, they always have in both Avengers movie. They did this a few times in this movie. The one long unbroken take of them being a team which is always cool, and I always love it, and it always makes me feel like I'm watching a live action comic book. But they start off. I think the first shot is that in this movie is one of them. Whereas they had it in Avengers 1, it was one towards the very end. But yeah, that was very cool to see, to kind of flow through the woods in the first opening scene.
oh yeah, first
And
awesome
then-
move by him,
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the few moments that I saw that I kind of could point out what was a special effect and what wasn't. And I don't really judge movies off their special effects that much unless it's like a movie like Gravity or Avatar that's like basing their entire movie around special effects. So yeah, special effects were absolutely solid.
Well, let me talk about that real quick. That part right there is, he obviously knew he hit a home run with that scene in the first Avengers, and it felt like that whole movie built up to that one scene, and that scene was incredible. And then it was like the end of the movie, and that was like, other than the fact that the rest of the movie was amazing too, that scene was so incredible, and it's like, oh, of course, because he's a freaking genius, he's gonna put the best scene he has in the first 15 seconds of the movie. Seriously, that scene that you see, people. If you should have seen it by now if you're listening to the spoilers, but if you're dumb and you haven't seen it and you're now listening to us spoiling it for you, that trailer that shows them fighting in the winter scene, the woods, that's the first 10-minute segment. Right off the rip, there's action, and there's that amazing segment. I mean, I was immediately impressed by that. I was like, let's go. I was so ready for the rest of the movie after that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess just the last thing I have to say about that is the only two times they have the unbroken take is when it's the team you see from the first Avengers, and then the second time they do it is at the very end when it's everybody. Once they get new members and whatever, it's everybody in the final act. But yeah, we talked about this last week. Well-made trailers. All those trailers, none of those trailers really gave away the third act. I don't think there was very few moments where I saw full scenes where you see scenes that I recognized in the third act when they're on the fictional Sokovia.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so either. And I was really happy about that because when I saw that really cool scene in the winter in the woods and stuff, I was thinking, damn, they're going to give away one of their best scenes in their climax. Because I'm thinking back to the first one because that's what they used in their climax. And I was really bummed. I was like, this is what I'm thinking to myself in the last episode, I'm like, this is what I mean by trailers. But then I was completely like, had my words thrown back right down my throat because it was in the first segment. You really didn't miss much from that trailer at all. It really did not give stuff away, which I was very, very grateful for.
Yeah.
Because after that trailer came out, actually, I was a little bit more skeptical of how good this movie was going to compare up to the first one, because it seemed to give away something really cool, and it didn't give away anything. It blew my mind away.
Yeah. Those were, really well-made trailers. If you've seen the trailer, you did not see the full movie by even a long shot.
Don't worry.
What do you think? All right. What do you think of the twins?
Pretty cool. I like them. As far as the execution of that accent, I'm not an expert, but it felt like it wasn't totally on their game. I'm okay with it, though. Whatever.
I was thinking about that. I was like, I never really care if actors have really horrible fake accents, because I mean, once you've seen Nicolas Cage in Con Air, you've seen it all. So anything better than that,
which is
literally anything
movie.
better than that. Best movie ever. Go see it.
Watch Con Air.
2 thumbs up. Seriously, it's fucking fantastic.
It's so hilarious.
I love that movie.
And all the wrong reasons. I don't know. It's such a good movie. I honestly,
It really is. Alright, this is a random tangent about Con Air.
If you're hanging out with your boys, slamming a few brews, watch Con Air.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh boy. Alright, yeah, anyways. But yeah, the accents. They, like I said, because it wasn't like some foreign, movie that was about surviving in Sokovia, Russia, or whatever. It was a comic book movie. I did not expect them to nail the accent, and they got very little speaking lines to begin with, so I was okay with it.
They didn't have to recite some poetry in their foreign language.
Yeah.
So
I think they knew. I think Joss Whedon knew what he was dealing with, and probably made the smart decision of keeping his accent to a minimum, keeping their lines to a minimum. And that's smart.
I thought it was cool when they had the flashbacks for Black Widow. They had her speaking when she was an adult. They had her speaking in with an American accent, but as a kid, whenever she people were interacting with her, she kind of had an accent there, but it still seemed like she was getting rid of it, as part of her training.
Right.
That was kind of a cool little small detail they added.
Yep. That was another cool part that I kind of want to get to related to Black Widow, but still starting in the beginning segment. So you just reminded me of something I wanted to mention in the beginning that I loved right away. Okay, going back to the first one, this is one of the main complaints about the first one. Black Widow was used just as a sex object. She was the sexy one of that. She didn't do... And not to mention, of course, that's what they do for practically every superhero team anyways. And movies, that's just what, sex sells, people. We get used to it. It's not a great way to portray women most of the time, but that's just the way the world works at the moment. So, of course, they're going to have that in there. But if you're going to do that, make sure she contributes to the team. In the first one, you can make the argument that Black Widow really didn't contribute much to the team. You see her firing out a few shots. She kicks ass once to one alien, but as a whole, a lot of people said she basically did nothing. In this one, she is incredibly integral. In the end scene, after that whole fight scene, she has to calm down the Hulk. So she is there now from there on to calm down the Hulk whenever he needs to be calmed down at the end of every fight. Because if they don't, who knows, he'll run off and cause further destruction, kill some certain people, who knows. So at this point, right off in the first 5 minutes, they've had that cool action scene, and then they've made immediately Black Widow extremely important to the team. Extremely. So that was very satisfying to me again, right off there.
Yeah, and that turns out to be an important relationship to
throughout the rest of the movie.
The rest of the movie, not just because eventually even in the trailers, it's kind of hinted at that they kind of get together. But like eventually, when they do, it's actually very important. It's not just a random romance thing, which I thought it was going to be, and I wouldn't really had a problem with it, just because movies fit in romance whenever, just, whatever, it's nice.
Yeah.
But it was very important. It influenced the decisions of what we're eventually going to talk about, which is the ending when we get there.
When we get there, we'll see you there.
But yeah, Mark Ruffalo is just so good.
He's very good, very good, and
he's even better in this one.
That complete exhaustion you see in his face and his eyes when he comes down from the Hulk, and he's just bewildered and kind of just thrown aside. And even though he did a great job for the team and he really helped them out, he's still like, it's like when you wake up the next morning after a unfortunate booze-filled night, you're like, oh my god, who did I hurt? What did I do? And you're just your face.
What did I do?
Your face is just filled with shame, and people are just like, no, man, you were cool. But no matter what people say, sometimes you still got that like voice in the back of your head that you may have done something bad.
Or even, what did I hurt? Who did I do?
Who did I? Ooh, hello. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, no, I thought that was really cool that even though they won the battle, it wasn't like a yay go team high fives and stuff. Hawkeye ends up with a pretty bad wound, and Hulk and Bruce Banner is messed up in the head, man.
Yeah, but it's like, and it's really realistic where they don't have to make it. A lot of movies don't know how to do this, where they do like, all right, we're going to give them a mission where they fail, or where they're really good at the beginning, really bad in the middle, and then really good at the end, to redeem them. But then the first one, when they're really good, they're fucking bulletproof. Nothing hits them, nothing scratches them, nothing even hurts them at all. And then the second one, every single person gets fucked. The second battle, when it's supposed to go wrong, everyone gets fucked. They don't know how to do the kind of like realistic. Even though it's an incredibly unrealistic movie, they still make it realistic like that, where it's like, just because it was a successful mission doesn't mean everybody's gonna be just happy at the end of it.
Exactly. Yeah. They definitely did a good job of that as well.
Yeah, and that's what eventually happened in the second battle, about how, they were like, they get fucked, but they don't, not all of them get fucked, and...
Well,
some of them.
Before we get into that, I just want to talk about the origin of Ultron, because that was another one of the points that I really liked about this one that was not existence in the first one. If you don't mind interrupting.
That's fine.
Well, the thing about Ultron, which first of all, the fact that Tony Stark created him is going to have big ass repercussions in the next movie. We'll talk about that later.
Uh-huh.
But I thought it was so cool because in the first one, we've seen Loki. We've seen him in Thor before Avengers. We know his origin story. We know what he can do. We know he's like a scheming, conniving little fucking asshole sometimes. But so when he comes around in Avengers, you're like, oh shit, it's about to go down. We know that.
Uh-huh.
But to see this origin and this birth of Ultron, who turned out to be such a cool bad guy. This really like enigmatic, just out there, almost biblical, kind of guy that with his weird like quotes and stuff. To see him originate in such a creepy, cool way when they're at their height, they're having their little soiree, their party, and he creeps out in his all messed up robot. It was so cool how that started out, and it was very cool to see literally a bad guy start from day one, like from birth, into rise as fast as he did.
Yeah, that was... Yeah,
and I gotta say, what's his name?
James Spader?
Yeah, did a fantastic voice job.
Oh, he was so good.
Very good.
You could tell that he was just so into the role.
Yeah.
Without like having to. That was great. He added so much personality to it that didn't even need to be written into the character. He just added this great personality to Ultron. Kind of You know, some moments were funny, some moments were terrifying. He's like the one part when Ulysses Claw is like says, "Are you working for Stark?" He gets so offended, he just casually chops
Yeah.
his arm off. He's just like, "Ah, no, I don't. You don't get an arm anymore."
Yeah,
Like,
and then he's
fuck.
like, wait, oh, I'm sorry. Wait, no, but why would you compare me to, he actually has a genuine, almost like a genuine, very human reaction to someone who has just hit a really weak spot. You push a button
Yeah,
on him, You
yeah.
definitely,
He's like, "I'm sorry for cutting your hand off, but what the fuck, man?"
yeah. Clearly, he had his buttons pushed on that part. I thought that was very cool. And how do you like the showing? How do you like Andy Serkis showing up?
Oh, Andy Serkis is phenomenal. He was in there for like 2 seconds, but it didn't matter. He was so good, and
Yeah,
he's good in all of everything.
yeah, he's pretty funny.
But yeah, he was a good. He was a kind of goofy character. He's obviously, for people that don't know, he's the main villain, main antagonist for Black Panther, who's showing up in Captain America: Civil War.
Oh, I didn't know that. So wait, what's his name in the movie again? I totally forgot.
Ulysses Claw, and
Okay,
guess
is he gonna get the
what he gets
claw?
in the comics after he loses an arm? He gets a
A
claw.
claw? Is it a claw?
Who was it that we were saying
Wait,
was
wait,
named
Max.
by their parents to be?
Is,
Yeah,
is it a claw?
it's a claw.
Okay.
Who was it we were saying in the past that we said was just their parents just set them up to be a supervillain? Edward Nygma.
Edward Nygma.
That's Ulysses Claw. Ulysses S.
Or
Claw.
Slade Wilson.
Slade Wilson
Slade.
with his new girlfriend Furiosa
Yeah,
and Toast.
and Toast. Toast.
So yeah, that was kind of a good setup of Claw.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I did not know that, but that's cool. I'm excited. Well, they did mention. I thought they were going to be more of a nod because they talked about. They're like, well, where does that come from? And then they're like, oh, some place in Africa. I was like, oh shit. What's it called?
Wakanda, I think.
I was like, oh shit, they're gonna show Black Panther. I didn't know this, but they don't show him. But
And
they,
I was kind of glad they didn't. They just made us aware, like, hey, they referenced Wakanda real briefly, I think, in I think in Iron Man 2, when Iron Man 2 was being a commercial for the next Avengers movie, they referenced Wakanda very briefly.
yeah, that
So
would
they
have
did
been.
this.
You're
They
right. That would
followed
have
through
been
with it.
much.
Uh-huh.
But actually, that reminded me real quick. I should mention I did like how they introduced both the side character from Winter Soldier, that was what's his
Yeah.
name, and
Shit, what's his name?
I don't know.
I want to say Rhodey Rhodes, but that's
No,
from Iron Man.
that's from Iron Man, and I'm
Uh,
glad he was in it too.
Hawk dude.
Warhawk is
I
it
don't know.
maybe? I don't know. All right, that guy with the wings and stuff, the metal wings. I like how they threw him in
Anthony
there.
Mackie.
Yeah, they threw
Great
him in
actor.
there, and they threw Don Cheadle as War Machine, Rhodey,
Uh,
and they threw in a lot of like side characters too, which you know they threw in one of Thor's side characters. Just it made it more. It gave each character a background and a purpose.
yeah.
Without getting too
Falcon.
muddled.
That's his name.
Falcon. Okay.
Just looked it up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So second scene. Second scene. This team gets pulled apart, right? Team gets pulled
Second
apart.
action scene.
Yeah. And this is kind of following the typical second act structure where they fall down, they hit that pit. At this point, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are against them. They have sided with Ultron because of their vendetta against Stark, right? Yeah. So that
Uh-huh.
was a very cool thing. Again, we got some cool background on characters that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Well, we have seen, but the thing I always liked about certain superheroes is when they show how tormented they are by inner demons. My favorite superhero is Batman. He's like freaking
He's
staple
got
child.
no demons. What are you talking about?
He's got one or two. One being his dad, the second being his mom, and
The third being literally every other horrible thing he's had to face in life,
Exactly.
which is endless.
So, I love that. It gives character and gives superheroes a lot more depth other than just I want to save people.
It makes him relatable.
Yeah. So that part with the Scarlet Witch was very cool, which led to the awesome Hulk Iron Man scene.
So great.
Yeah.
That was such a good action scene. When they when they were just like, Hulk is going crazy or whatever, I'm just like, oh, this is a scene from the trailer. This is going to be cool. I didn't realize how awesome that was going to be.
It was such a good brawl. It honestly worried me because I was thinking to myself, oh god, they're already doing what Batman vs. Superman's going to do. They're like fighting through the industrial pits and like hitting each other with like massive freaking banisters and shit. I'm like, they do this in The Dark Knight Returns. No, I want it to be saved because I don't want Batman vs Superman to come out and people be like, oh, people already did it. Whatever.
Well, the cheeky little fuckers at Marvel even did slate Captain America: Civil War to come out the same year and same summer as Batman v Superman. Anyway,
yeah,
so that's gonna be.
But Batman vs Superman will come out first, which is good. So who cares? Anyways, that fight scene was incredible. I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
It just shows Hulk's just insanity, and I really like to see that because I don't like when they ever show him losing. And I don't think they should, because even in the comics, that suit that Iron Man uses called the Hulkbuster. It is, if you look at the description, it says it is the only suit of Iron Man's to come close to beating him. Nothing beats the Hulk. That is the point. I think there's like one dude or something, I don't know, that beats the Hulk. But other than that, literally nobody in the entire Marvel universe that has gone against him has beaten him. So, I didn't really like how they ended that, because are we to assume that Iron Man won? Or...
Not really. It was more of a sedation. He didn't beat Hulk because Hulk was just kind of... I mean, he threw Hulk through a building. Yeah, he threw Hulk through a building. He punched the Hulk. He had that, like, Rock'em Sock'em Robots fist to just punch Hulk 100,000 times. That was hilarious. Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Yeah, that was funny. The whole theater was, like, laughing along with that.
Yeah, I was cracking up at that scene. That was... So yeah, he didn't really win. He just noticed that Hulk was... I'm pretty sure he noticed like Hulk was distracted or like, or close to being unconscious, and he just took advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I'm not gonna admit that Hulk like lost, but it was still an amazing scene, and yeah, it did follow along the same lines as Thor fighting Iron Man in the first one, but... To go against that fight was kind of dumb in the first one, if you think about it.
I liked it because it was like...
No, I liked the fight, but it didn't really start for any reason. It was just like a stupid misunderstanding, and then they decided to like get hostile. And all the while, Loki's just chilling on some like cliff point, just waiting for them to stop fighting so they can, It was just an excuse, I think.
Why isn't Loki running away?
Yeah, why didn't he run away
Let's
in that scene?
Bring him back to our base.
For me, I loved it. Like I said, the fight scene was funny and cool. And Captain America, which he doesn't do this enough, steps in and like commands the team and becomes a boss like he should. But it seemed like Joss Whedon in that one was just trying to make an excuse for them to fight each other because people know that that's what they want to see. But in this one, it really needed to happen, Which I thought was cool.
Yeah, some people are complaining that Captain America didn't get enough screen time. I think he got a solid amount of screen time. In the second one? He came in the second one, and again he came back as even more of a boss than he was in the first one with his kick-ass fighting that he learned in Winter Soldier. That was amazing.
Yeah,
it wasn't as...
Right off the rip, you see Thor, and Thor and him going back and forth with their cool little And the little pass-offs were sweet too. It shows how much
Uh-huh.
chemistry they've built in the last few years or so.
Yeah.
Working with each other, throwing like their weapons off of each other and stuff. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah. I guess just to speed this up for a little bit for time. Hawkeye, how much did you think Hawkeye was going to die, and how much did they set that up that he was going to die?
They did, and I thought he was, and I'm glad he didn't. Although I was worried.
Uh-huh.
I kind of I would have been okay with it, but at the same time, I
They
wouldn't have minded.
really drilled in the kind of fear that he was going to die. Like, I feel like they were just sitting there going, they all think he's going to die.
Well,
But,
yeah,
like,
because you see his family and you see his wife, and you're
yeah.
like, oh shit.
I think at one point he even says, one last mission or something like that. I'm just like, oh, that's the movie rule. He
Yeah,
said one
yeah,
last mission or whatever.
exactly.
He's going to absolutely be dead.
And it wouldn't be losing much if he did that. I did that in my head too. I was like, it sucks to lose Hawkeye, but it's not a crazy vital part of the team. But then again, in this movie, him providing the
It's so good.
hideout, yeah, him providing the hideout, showing different scenes and different parts of the action. He's not controlled by some bad guy the whole movie. He's his own self. He does a badass little like thing against Scarlet Witch to not have him mind controlled. I love that little quip he did.
Yeah.
He was, again, him and Black Widow, the two least important people, are pretty much the most important part of that movie that time
Oh,
around.
yeah. They hold their weight like crazy.
Yeah. What's that? Her name, the wife, Linda Cardellini. Also, I love that she was in there. I love her.
Yeah. Just a random surprise from her. I was like, fuck yeah.
She's a babe. She needs to be in more stuff.
Geeks girl.
Yeah, and she was in Grandma's Boy, and I thought she was hot in that. So I was like, where is she in other stuff? But anyways, she had a great line that was like, Hawkeye said something like, "I know you're worried because they're gods, and like, you're worried that they don't need me." And then she said, "No, I'm worried that they do need you."
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really cool line because they do. They need to keep. He needs to be around. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, he's like, what's it in Justice League in the show? Green Arrow at one point says that he's there. He was hired by Batman to make sure that that Green Arrow is the level-headed one, no matter what. No matter what these gods with huge superpowers are thinking, he's the one who's human that says, "Listen, I'm human. I know what those humans are thinking right now. I know how scared they are." And that's what that kind of reminds me of Hawkeye, and he's the level-headed one who's also fittingly has an arrow. I don't know if that's a theme now.
Wow. Dudes with arrows are pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
the theme.
so we have that, and he's very useful, and actually like
So then, it leads up to a cool little exchange between Captain America and Iron Man, which has massive repercussions.
wonder
They
what
still
movie
hint
that's
at it.
hinting towards.
Yeah, they hint at it. They have a little argument, and they hint at it, and then they move on real quick because they're like,
Yes.
we don't want to mess it up. We don't want to be bashing you over the head, Gotham. And
Enough
so
with the Riddlers, Mr. Nigma.
yeah, right. And so then they speed off to what turns into the third act, and it's gonna be awesome. And we're all pumped, and I'm pumped, and I'm thinking it better fucking deliver, and it totally
It did.
did.
It was, again, a lot of people are saying that was more of the same, where it was like they're fighting to keep a thing there's a bunch of humans below, and they're fighting to keep a thing from not falling on those humans,
Yeah.
which is what
It did
happened
seem
in
to
Guardians of the
follow
Galaxy
similar.
and Avengers 1 and Iron Man, or what's it called? Captain America 2, where they couldn't let the helicarrier fall on everybody. So, that was always the third act, but this one was really cool because it wasn't like, I don't know. I liked it better than, because it had so many more variables, I guess.
Yeah, you had Vision, whose really one purpose was to,
Yeah, we skimped
was
through his origin. What did you think of that?
yeah, sorry about that. Well,
No, I just realized too.
throw him in there. Jarvis becomes real and badass and amazing. And he was
Yeah.
cool how he just trumps him. He's like, well, you don't have to trust me, but I'm awesome and on your side, so trust me. And so that's
Yeah.
the Division. That's his origin, basically.
Yeah, that was absolutely...
And then
He was a
after that, did
great
you notice
character.
this? I'm asking you, so Iron Man loses Jarvis, but he gets a new girl voice in his head. Is that Haley Atwell? Is that the voice of Agent Carter?
Her name is
Like Friday, right?
Friday,
But I
who
think
it was in the comics that he made up. I don't know if it's Haley Atwell. I couldn't tell.
I'm gonna bet it was, and then we're gonna look it up afterwards, and then I'm gonna be totally right. But anyways, so yeah, what was again? Captain America steps in for this final act and commands people to go to do stuff where to go.
Yeah.
Which in the first one was great. I was really happy he did that because he needs to do that. But this time, instead of telling Thor to just stand at the top of a building and shoot lightning at the hole for like an hour, he literally tells him like, we're on the ground fighting off as many people as we can,
Uh-huh.
while like they kept the fighting to them while you know did this? Oh, Iron Man, because he could fly around and be really quick in a lot of different places, was doing all the saving, and Quicksilver was doing all the saving because they're fast and they're quick. And while the guys that you want to see fighting, Thor, Captain America, Hulk, they're actually doing the fighting. It's sweet.
Yeah.
I was a little bummed in the first one, looking back at it, when you just see Thor electrocuting a building for like 20 minutes. But in this one, he freaking kicks ass. There's none of that. He's constantly kicking ass.
Yeah. He kills it in this one.
Yeah, I was happy to see Thor. And then, of course, the really cool conclusion. Well, you see Quicksilver get his poor little. He saves all these people and then dies just as he converts onto the team, which is sad.
Yeah. That sucks. I was kind of like, I didn't know how they were going to handle that because I really didn't want an important character that could be used in the future to be killed. But I also didn't want them to just introduce a character just to die. And they didn't, and even though they did, I still didn't see it coming, which is why I don't mind as much. So,
Yeah. Well, doesn't he say that when he dies? I bet you didn't see that coming.
oh
Or
yeah.
something like that.
His
So,
first and last lines of the movie,
you,
both spoken to Hawkeye.
you totally didn't see that coming, Max. Nobody saw that coming.
I love the part where he's like, keep up, old man, and he
Oh, yeah.
yeah, points his arrow at him. And just,
Nobody would
no
know.
one would know. Nobody would know.
The humor was definitely on point in this one. Like, almost too much. Just a hair too much, but it was really good. Like, not too much, but kinda. You know what I mean? Like, it was used really well, but there were times that it was like all the jokes were well placed and well used, but it was too often. And I want superhero movies to be taken a little bit more serious.
Uh-huh.
So that was my slight beef, if you could call any of it. There's really not done. Speaking
Yeah.
of which I loved, so this is kind of hypocritical of me to say this now, that whole segment when they're all trying to pick up the hammer
Oh,
in
that was great.
the party. So
That was
funny.
such a like human part of it. Fucking what's his face? Hawkeye is so good at. He's just twirling drums, just like it's a little trick. You're just fooling us. That's such a cool thing to have him do, or
Yeah.
have everyone do, and to interact with each other like
That
that.
was so perfect to see them like a real team. And then oh my god,
Uh-huh.
when Captain America tries and he moves it like it budges, and the look on Thor's face. Did you notice that?
Uh-huh.
Captain America actually moves it, and Thor's like in complete fear
And nobody, yeah,
for a split
nobody
second,
notices it.
but he
Nobody
does.
notices it when, except for like in the team, except for Thor, and he's like, yeah, that was not even close. And then when Vision picks up the hammer, there's that awkward moment where people just like stand there, just like, oh,
Oh man,
and
the theater gasped. they gasped. Or
Yeah, so
they
did
did
mine.
like one of those ooh that like when Jerry Springer
Yeah.
like introduces the ex-boyfriend that's been cheating with your girlfriend's sister or whatever, everybody goes like ooh. This was totally that moment. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was great as what was the yeah, it was funny because it was like that moment when you're in the lunchroom in school and the someone calls out the bully and the bully just looks at him and everyone just goes quiet and just like,
Yeah.
what's he gonna do?
Oh man, that was a great moment. There were some amazing moments in that movie. That was
Even the
definitely one.
Avengers team just paused and like, shit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if they had any other doubt that they should trust this Vision guy, that was just gone away at that point.
And yeah, that was a cool kind of show. Oh yeah, I was thinking that whole scene. If you don't read the comics that much, and you knew nothing about Vision, like you saw that trailer where they kind of teased the Vision for like other people who like, oh, you read the comics. If people didn't read the comics and they're just seeing this fucking random Martian guy just flying around, and he has Jarvis's voice, everyone's just gonna be like, "What the fuck is happening? What the
Yeah,
fuck is happening?"
yeah. It was a bit much for me as one of those people. It was a bit much for me to. But I haven't read the Vision comics, so I don't really know where he comes from. But as far as a comic book superhero kind of fan, I knew where they were coming from with that. It was a basic origin story.
Yeah,
Ultron trying to become human in the middle of syncing his brain with like human tissue, and then Iron Man and what's his name, Bruce Banner, finish the job but upload Jarvis's benevolent mind into it and becomes Vision. I
yeah.
follow that.
I got a little beef on that scene, just because of it's like it just proves like Tony Stark just doesn't learn.
He
That was my
doesn't.
only kind
He
of beef
doesn't learn.
that he was not like
But
he
he
has
will.
his moments of like character dynamics like in the third Iron Man. He was very you know he actually had like a character arc and everything like that throughout the Iron Man series. But this one just kind of like as far as the Avengers movie goes, just kind of shits on that where he's on his own agenda all the time. And it's like, dude, really?
Yeah. But I think the ending of this, and I guess we'll try to wrap this up soon. With that being said, is what's the repercussions of this movie? Is even though it ended very light and happy, with everybody kind of doing their own thing, heading off their own way. Very sad about Hulk, of course.
Oh yeah.
Robert Downey, we'll get to that, but with Iron Man leaving, I think he has always said, and he said this a few times in the movie, he would love to see peace in our time. And that's why he created Ultron in the first place. But the reason why he became Iron Man, which this is critical, is he believed that because he had created all these weapons and people had died for it, he wanted to become Iron Man to do better. He believed that people should be responsible for their actions. So I think that this is going to set up a really great way. He created Ultron. He created
Uh-huh.
something in that entity that killed thousands of people, and he's going to feel even more obligated to pay for or to pay the consequences, which is going to set up for him easily. In the Civil War comic book, you almost kind of wonder why Tony Stark is behind the registration. But in this one, you totally would understand why his form of thinking would go this way.
Yeah.
He has caused this global disaster, basically, and now he feels so much regret that he would be chomping at the bit to take this opportunity to become more regulated. So I think this is a great setup for Civil War.
Yeah. And another setup for just the future in general. Thor's departure
Yep.
and Thor's departure and Hulk's departure, which is just heartbreaking, and it kind of hinted towards an even more sentient Thor or Hulk. I mean, a more thinking Hulk, who actually like is conscious of his surroundings and what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is it would be interesting to see because that sets up some really cool things of what could happen with that. I mean, you don't
Uh-huh.
really know. There's even a point in the comics where Bruce Banner and Hulk have completely separated from each other. So, as like
Yeah,
there's like two separate
that's a
beings. So it could go
tripping
it
moment.
could go that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of
But wait,
speculation we could do on that.
where does Thor go? I forget at the end already. He doesn't
Thor goes back to
leave.
yeah, he leaves to Asgard because he needs to go Ragnarok all over the
Right.
place.
He needs the Ragnarok. He needs to figure out his visions, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, it was kind of that was the most set-up-y part of the movie. Whereas Avengers 2, there was very little setup to a future besides the post-credit scene. There was very little setup. It was like, oh, okay, you could just stop there and you're good. But this one was kind of like, oh, we want to know what happens to
Well, if you think
Thor.
about it,
Thor leaves, then comes back and is like, hey, guys, in case you haven't been on the internet at all, the Infinity Stones are coming, or whatever. You know, we're
yeah,
doing that.
it was a good way of mentioning it, because in the end, it is a second movie of 3 series, or 5 if you count the 2 parts, or
Yeah.
yeah, 4 if you count the 2
Four.
parts.
Counting. Math.
Math hurts brain. Anyways, but yeah, like, so you like to think that they can be complete. You like to think that they can be complete movies from beginning to end, but it's good. But you also think to yourself, okay, they're part of a series. They need to leave off where the first one left off and continue on and move the story forward. And so that part did lack a little bit as far as a whole of the series.
There's a bit of an expository dialogue.
It did give Thor a purpose, a little more of a purpose. Like he saw his visions. He knows otherworldly things because he's like a god, whatever. And then he goes to this pit that he sees, has these visions about Thanos, and then goes to look into a future, and then the mention to Captain America about the Infinity Stones. Those were definitely vital to move the story towards the eventual Thanos and Infinity Wars Part 1 and 2. So it was very small, and it probably should have been touched on a little bit more, but I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they did it something.
Hey guys, this is what the sequels are going to be about.
And then the ending with Captain America setting up the new team, so awesome.
Yeah, which is what people are rumoring is going to be Infinity War Part 1 is going to be that team, since because of like contractual issues, it's going to be that team. They're going to get their ass handed to, and then Part 2, the main team is going to come back.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I don't like that new team. I like Captain America, of course, but
I don't mind the new team.
You need to have Iron Man. And
yeah, but I mean, I know since the comics all have there's the Avengers West, the Avengers East, and then the Secret Avengers. So maybe they're just setting up to like a different form of a team.
Well,
but
in
the English Avengers, is the Captain England is a character in the MCU.
Really?
Yeah.
God. Yeah, that's when it's gotten too far. That's when comic books piss me off sometimes. It's like the universes get so massive, it's like you can't even follow anything.
Yeah, luckily they're doing the reboot.
Yeah, that's why everybody was. Well, we're getting off way on the tangent. We'll talk about that another time.
So, all right, yeah. So then,
As
I guess
a whole.
final thing. What did you think of the post-credits scene?
Well, good. I mean, I'm more and more liking. I am blanking on his name. Shit.
Josh Brolin?
Yeah, I am more and more liking him as Thanos. In the beginning, I was just kind of, I don't know, like the CG looked amazing and his image looked great, but I'm not so sold on his voice. And then that last part of that scene, I was really kind of sold on him, and then I was like, oh boy, man, like, here we go. I'm really pumped though, but it's so shitty that it's like so long until then.
I know it's an Avengers movie and they have to do it for Avengers, but when you have what's his face, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange all having future movies, standalone movies, and tie-ins with the universe. You couldn't tease one of those instead of another Thanos tease. We saw Thanos at the end of Avengers. We saw him a lot in Guardians. We know he's coming. We know the
it's nothing
gauntlet's a
spectacular.
thing.
I guess I see what you're saying. It's a
That
movie,
was my only disappointment about it.
It's a movie like the Avengers. A movie like the Avengers is like big. It's massive. It's not like Iron Man 4 or Thor 2. You know, it's like it should have a good teaser. And for that teaser, it's like, oh yeah, well we knew that.
Yeah, they could have done anything without having to have actual cast members in there that tease something. Like, I don't know. Like, one of my friends was saying that they could have literally had some teenager in a red hoodie with his back to the camera and some random guy goes up to him and says, "Hey, Peter Parker, how are you?" Like, literally, even that would have worked.
Watch out for that spider, Peter.
Or, yeah, I mean, might as well have a guy looking at the camera just going, Spider-Man's going to be in the next one.
And people would have been happy about that, too.
Yeah. Like, or the one, another shout out to Screen Junkies and Movie Fights, their podcast. They had an idea that you could just have it. What would have been cool is a pan across a wall, all with Daily Bugle newspapers that say, you know, Battle of New York, referencing the first Avengers, a reference to Incredible Hulk, a reference to Avengers 2 or Daredevil, the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, and then when it gets to the Avengers 2 one, a web just slaps onto that, and then it cuts to black. That would have been enough.
Yeah.
Or like back in Wakanda, since
it was just too much. They didn't want it. They're very good at keeping everything at hold until they're completely ready to let it go. So I'm not too worried. Although
with Black Panther, you're getting him before you're not going to get before his standalone movie. You're getting Black Panther in Captain America: Civil War. So I thought they'd at least even like tease him. Even though they wouldn't give a fucking origin story in a post-credits scene, they would still. And they said that there's going to be no more there's not going to be no more origin stories for any of these heroes, really.
Thank God. Oh, that reminds me real quick, actually, of this second one, which is probably overly obvious. But I just want to quickly say that's again another part that I love that of Avengers. You don't see a fucking 50-minute movie about them originating and coming together. They're there. They're peak, and they're awesome. That's why The Dark Knight excelled. That's why so many of those movies excel when they're just starting out right away. So, but that's all I wanted to say. Another great point about this.
Whatever. So
with that,
bottom line, awesome movie. Great to see everything.
I want to see it again.
We could definitely talk from way longer, but I don't want to edit that long.
Yeah, I understand.
I try as much as I can to have a life.
Yeah, well, I try to go to bed. I'm tired. I'm a boring old man who has a full-time job and gets sleepy at like 9:30. It's sad.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
All right. Well, good.
So
I'm excited for the future, though. A lot of big things happening with that movie. So
with that movie and future movies coming up.
Oh yeah.
Will Mad Max? No, Mad Max won't be out by the next episode. We're absolutely doing an episode on Mad Max because I'm fucking psyched.
All right, cool. Well, I'll have to like catch up on the older stuff too. But yeah, we should do that. But anyways, Max, eventually in the future, I think we should tell people, we will be having these versions downloadable. Apologies for taking so long on that, but we were trying to figure out a way to do it free. And it was very complicated, so we're just going to decide to suck it up and pay for it.
Yeah, we're going to pay for it when we have money, and we're going to make it downloadable. It's going to be on iTunes. It's going to be on its own hosted website.
And we'll do that with all of our older episodes,
It's going to stay on YouTube.
Right? We can do that with all of our older episodes.
Yeah, we can do that with all our episodes. Stay on YouTube also, just in case like people just want it. We're going to be doing a lot with this podcast. It's, big things have small beginnings, as Prometheus would say. As the movie would say, not the god Prometheus.
Yeah.
But
just say Michael Fassbender.
As Michael Fassbender would say, because he says that on a regular basis.
Oh yeah. Also, side note, real quick. I think Assassin's Creed has started filming.
Has it? That is an under wraps movie.
I know, right? I think though it's a very floating rumor, but that's it. You heard it from me. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first, maybe.
Maybe. Nobody knows. And if you have, and I'm not supposed to tell you that, then you haven't heard it here first.
Great. Real Brothers Podcast, everybody.
But yeah. Please comment, tweet, whatever. Share something.
Okay, so you don't really have a Twitter, but you have the Real Brothers, the @RealBrothers Podcast Twitter.
Yeah, I gotta start keeping up with that thing. I'm bad. But
no, that's fine. I'm at MaxLot2248. I'll be tweeting this. And then there's @AlphaCentauri on YouTube, on Twitter. AlphaCentauri is on Facebook and the YouTube channel that you're probably watching this on because it's not downloadable yet. And yeah, Google Plus is the same name or AlphaCentauriFilms. So check us.
Yeah, please do.
Out. Gmail us if you want. Contact us in any way. We don't
I
care.
like to think we're interesting people. Somewhat.
We're busy.
Give us a chance. And on that note, I guess we'll see you all next time. We'll have plenty more to talk about all sorts of things that most likely center around superheroes. We'll try to do other stuff though.
All sorts of stuff. And movies will be involved in those stuff.
Eventually, sorta, yeah. Alright, bye-bye now.
See ya.